Happy Friday, folks. Welcome to another edition of Cape, and today we have an info-packed show for you this evening because we have our two newspaper people to share with you today, including Taylor Bradford of the Gloucester Daily Times. She touches upon a few different subjects, including the hullabaloo around Gloucester's beaches, the opening of Happy Valley, and a dramatic rescue on Long Beach.
So this morning, I actually met Kory over at Blackburn for the grand opening of Happy Valley Ventures, the newest and first pot shop here in Gloucester. So when we arrived, there was a line of people waiting for it to open, and city officials such as the mayor herself, Steve LeBlanc, Melissa Cox, Barry Pett was there as well. And they're all waiting for Ken Reel to bring out the big scissors to cut a giant ribbon to kind of commemorate the occasion. And once they cut the ribbon, some music was blaring, the sun was shining, and people were really excited to be able to go into this pot shop and get things that I think a lot of people in the city have been looking for, different flowers and pre-rolls and different things that people, both medical and recreational marijuana users, are looking for here in the city. And so I had the opportunity to tour the facilities, kind of get an idea of what it looks like, what the products and accessories are, but also talk a little bit about the economic impact that this might bring to the city, thinking about how it's actually providing about 100 opportunities of employment for people both in the city who are primarily from the city. About, I think they said like 35%, a little bit higher, of the employment is of people in the city. So providing those jobs for people, especially during this time of COVID. So really interesting to think about how this will impact the economy, but also just the overall health of the community, and kind of seeing where this goes, as I believe that there's 3 permits allowed for marijuana dispensaries here in the city. And so Happy Valley's taken up one of them, and there's a lot of other different pot shops that are vying for those last 2 permits. So we'll see what happens here in the city. But this morning was definitely a lot of people had smiles on their faces and a lot of excitement from people looking to get their resources at this marijuana dispensary.
Yeah, it's the one thing. First of all, they had a lot of staff on board to help, from parking right through the walkthroughs, which was great. And it reminded me of like an Apple store for people who would like marijuana or use marijuana.
Right. I don't know, Kory, if you got to go inside, but there's 2 screens, and one you could take your product and like even just place it on this little scale, and a giant screen would show like all the details about that product. So it's almost like a QR code, but you place it on. And there's another screen where if you've never used, or you want to kind of get an idea of what type of marijuana you'd want to use, you go to this screen and you could kind of explain it. It says, do you want medical or recreational? And then it even asks you, what do you want out of your experience? What is your experience like? What else can we help you with? There was like, take a hike, do yoga, stuff like that. It was, they're really trying to make sure that, when I spoke with Michael Reardon, one of the owners, he talked about how they're really trying to emphasize getting the pot for the people that best fit for them. They're not trying to sell you something that would be out of your comfort zone. So I thought that was, yeah, exactly, Kory, an Apple shop for pot.
Yeah, and they have even a private lounge, Heather, if you don't want to be seen. if you just want to consult, a private one-on-one consultation on what kind of gummies you should take home or keep in your purse, whatever,
Wait a minute. So as I understand it, they grow there also, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys were you able to see the facilities where they're growing things?
We were just in retail. Was that where you were, Taylor?
Yeah, I walked the outskirts of the entire building, and you can kind of see some of the outer machinery that's used, I think, for the manufacturing of all the products. But yeah, no, didn't go into where they grow or anything like that.
So it's a one-stop factory basically for marijuana, where they grow, they create the products, and then the retail is out in front.
Correct. Yes.
And is there any sort of wholesale operation happening? Are they shipping this anywhere, or is it all being sold right there? Sort of like.
I believe it's being all sold right there. I know they're going to have another shop in Boston eventually. And so that's a question I didn't ask that I would be interested in a follow-up to seeing, what that looks like. I know what he said is that they don't outsource any of their products coming in. So they know it's in their products and they know what they're selling. So I'd be curious to know, where where this stuff is going, because it seems from both my conversations with consumers but also employees that this is high quality stuff. It's expensive, but it's what apparently people have been looking for in the city for a while. So interested to see if they have any vendors that are looking to work with them for wholesale. So.
Yeah.
So is it on?
So I was shown their most expensive product ranges from $80 to $100, and that's called bubble hash. And he said that he'd be surprised if they kept their stock full, or they expected to sell out of that product by the end of this weekend. So I think it ranges in what you're getting and how much, but he said that's $80 to $100 for 1 gram of bubble hash. So
Good stuff. All right, not the harsh or mellow, ladies, but we have a serious story from Long Beach yesterday we want to talk about, Taylor.
Yeah, so yesterday over at Long Beach, there was a cry for help. A young man by the name of Billy Concata, he's 18 years old, was working over at the Cape Ann Motor Inn when he heard cries from help coming from the ocean. So he looked out and saw that there was a group of 5 people who had been pulled out by the riptide and had found themselves on some rocks, and then a wave came and knocked them off the rocks. And so they were being pulled out to sea. So he saw that. He said that after I talked to him after the incident, he said he grabbed his friend's surfboard, grabbed a friend, and they went out there and saved the group of swimmers who were having a difficulty getting back in. So luckily no one was seriously injured. They said that the Gloucester Fire Department said that they had a few scratches, that the lifeguards assisted those involved with bandages and what they need, and after that they kind of declined any other medical attention. So luckily everyone is safe, but it did bring up the conversation when I spoke with Billy and a few of his friends of just trying to really raise awareness of the dangers of the riptide and what's going on there at Long Beach, especially because most of the beach is Rockport owned. And there's a little part that is Gloucester owned, but just the way that the lifeguards are spread out, they kind of talked about how that area where those people had been taken out is a very popular area and a very common area for riptides to occur, and it's difficult and not necessarily always seen by the lifeguards in that area. And so again, that's what they said, and they're saying they want signage, or at least maybe moving lifeguards over to that area, because they've seen this in the past. This happens, they said, at least once or twice a week. And so really trying to make sure that they can, although that they are qualified, and as you can see from yesterday's report that they were able to assist these people, they really want to make sure that those who are there for the sake of saving lives can help and assist in that way. So if you were here in Gloucester last weekend, then you probably sat in traffic for at least a little bit, or saw droves of people coming into the city as the beaches and parking lots were packed. I was able to speak with Police Chief Ed Conley of the Gloucester Police Department a couple of days ago, and he said they actually handed out 478 parking tickets for parking violations here in the city, and that culminates to $31,000 in fines. Now, most of that money, all of that money, goes towards the Gloucester City's general fund. And you know, people had talked about where that money goes, but if we think about this number of parking violations last weekend in comparison to past years, it's almost double. So we think about 2018, Chief Conley had stated that they had about 217 tickets handed out last weekend, but then if you think about 2019, he said 154. So add those up, multiply those, whatever you want to do, still does not add up to the number of tickets that we had this year. 478 last weekend alone. So what the city is doing to kind of combat getting people coming into the city to enjoy the beaches is actually closing it down to non-residents. So this next weekend, if you're coming from out of town, don't even think about coming here to the beaches, because you won't find parking. For those who are out of town, aren't allowed to park in the beaches. Now, that doesn't prevent people from actually going and walking on. I know people had talked about, I talked to different people who had said that people take taxis, people Uber, and so you can't prevent people from walking onto the beaches. A couple of community members had suggested having people who walk on pay a fine, but as I spoke with the mayor, she said that's another thing that we have to tackle that they won't be able to do right now. And so really now do we keep people safe during a time of the pandemic, but also have people enjoy their summers here in Gloucester. So for residents at least, it means maybe the beaches will be a little less packed this weekend, but we'll just have to wait till Friday to see what actually ends up happening, especially because it's supposed to be high tide and it's supposed to be a beautiful, beautiful weekend.
I know that the quarries are also closed, and there's a lot of concern that, that there will be pressure put on those quarries for, all those people who can't make it to the beaches to try to, they will try to migrate to the quarries, but that's a big issue, that they're still trying to figure out how to police the quarries because they've been closed because of all the vandalism that's happened this spring. So that's an issue. And I think Rockport's worried because their beaches are open to the public still. So those people migrate to Rockport.
Right. And, with the quarries, a lot of those tickets, I think, might also be from quarry parking. People are, because they're trying to crack down on that as well. They have extra ticketers coming in. But they also said, okay, while people are being ticketed, if they don't leave, right, the next step is towing a car. But they work with Tallies. Tallies has their own business as well that they're dealing with, in addition to having police officers come and help them remove cars that have been ticketed and won't move. But that's a limited resource. So really, the question is, how do you continue to enforce these restrictions in a way that's effective and kind of raises awareness that people just should not be going out to their beaches if they're not from around here.
Kory, I know that beach really well. I used to be terrified with my kids there because that riptide was just always an issue. And I think they really have to work out the lifeguard situation because the Rockport lifeguards can't see that far. And apparently right now there are no Gloucester lifeguards there. So it's not fair to leave it up to the poor kid working in the motel to keep his eyes out on the
Right. But
water.
Hats off to that kid for being there and having his head straight,
Right. And he did receive a Good Samaritan Award, I understand.
Very cool. So thank you, Taylor, for that. Our next interview is with Erika Brown. She is, of course, the publisher and editor of the Manchester Cricket. And here she is remembering town clerk Christina St. Pierre.
Hey, guys. Great to see you this week. We had a kind of a sobering week this week here in Manchester. On Tuesday, we got the obituary for Christina St. Pierre, 35 years old, our town clerk here in Manchester for the last 2.5 years. But she's really, we like to say she's a local's local because she grew up in she grew up in Essex. She graduated from Manchester Essex Regional High School in 2002. And for the last 12 years, 35 is, not old, but she's had a long, deep profession as a municipal town clerk. She started in Essex as Essex's first appointed town clerk, which was really kind of special. And she worked in Essex for 8 years. She's from a local family. She was really an amazing, I really enjoyed her personally, just full disclosure. She was my kind of person, so I really was really sad to see something like this happen. She was super professional. She really did a lot of things that were kind of modernizing the role of the town clerk. So she did this both in Essex and in Manchester. So in Essex, she did a lot of work with archiving, sort of doing the digital archive for, town records, which is, really valuable for towns, particularly today, and certainly in anticipation of COVID, by the way. She did the same thing in Manchester when she came over, but she also expanded it to do things like she brought in electronic voting at town meetings. So these gadgets that you would have to register your votes, she's the one who researched, found all the vendors, negotiated with them, and really single-handedly did it. And the last thing, one of the last times I saw her was she oversaw and managed the town election that we talked about 3 weeks ago, which was a real challenge in light of COVID, and she did that. I saw her, and then the last official act she did was a week and a half ago, or 2 weeks ago today, she swore in Manchester's new fire chief. So, yeah, she's a mother of 4. She had 2 step children, and then 2 young kids. She lived in Salem with her husband, and I just want to say the whole community of Manchester, and I know Essex as well, just really, just is remembering her and is, mourning.
Yeah, very sad stuff. All right, Erika, thank you for that. You also want to highlight some of the letters to the editor this week in the Cricket.
Yeah, we have, I mean, the letter section is almost like a sport for us here. Before I got here, letters were something that everyone did, but it really was one of those cases where 20% of the people took up 80% of the oxygen in the room. Yet the same people sending in letters again and again. They were like a Gatling gun in terms of just, you know, again. So I wanted to stop that. So I have had this policy of one person, one letter, one topic. That's it. Because I really want to encourage people who are on the sidelines to participate. So it's taken a while, but it's starting to bubble up. And this week was really, really good evidence of that, because we have this character who is from town, from a family, the Backrys in town. I don't know if you know them, because did they live in Magnolia for a little while, I think?
Yeah, yeah.
Old family. Like,
they're right by the corner of Field Road and Norman Ave. Yeah.
Yes, sort of an old family in town in Manchester, a fixture in Manchester family. A lot of boys. They're all big. I remember the grandfather's name, Vudju. Anyway, so the Backrys are well known. Just so you know, here it gives you a little background. Mark Backry is one of the boys, because they had Valentine Movers. They had twin boys who ran Valentine's Movers. And then Mark Backry, 6'4", and he was the head of, for a while, the head of maximum security at the Essex County Jail in Middleton. Okay, so he was a big guy, worked in the jail, and he was tough. So this has nothing to do with the letters, by the way.
I'm gonna go there. I think this is really interesting.
When the Middleton jail opened, I want to say in the early 90s, late 80s, I was a reporter at the Salem Evening News. And I got to spend the night there when the prison was going through its rehearsal. They went through a week and a half of running the jail as if it was fully, occupied, but they didn't have any people in it. So they allowed people like me, reporters, to spend the night. And I spent the night in maximum security. It was really fun. So
let's go. Yeah.
So I ended up doing a connection to the Manchester connection, which was Mark Backry. Now, Mark wasn't there when I was doing it, but I knew Mark Backry. He was a character in town. I did a big interview with him. It was hilarious. And it ended up on the front page of the Salem Evening News with this amazing picture of him in opening him up the maximum security door. And because he was so tall, he's looking down menacingly at the photographer who's going like this. And the headline was Sultan of Solitary.
I thought you were going to say he was letting you out of your cubicle or your cell.
I love it. Sultan of Solitary. Okay, so with that as a backdrop, that's the Backrys.
Yeah.
So Buddy Backry is the uncle, right? Buddy Backry, as a matter of fact, last week we ran a letter to the editor from Buddy Backry. He lives in Georgia now. He lives in Smyrna, Georgia. And occasionally he lobs these letters over the fence to Manchester. One of them was, I'm glad I don't live in Manchester anymore. So we had the headline of that one that said, Buddy Backry is happy in Georgia. So last week, and this is a little serious now, but last week he wrote a letter to the editor that basically offered the other point of view on Black Lives Matter. And he said, listen, all lives matter, which is perhaps true in 20 years, maybe, after a lot of progress, but right now is obviously not, it's a tinderbox, right? It's not. Yeah, so we got 5 letters to the editor about Buddy Backry. So guess what? Buddy Backry's letter was this big.
Yeah.
The letters to responding to him are like this big.
And another thing.
Yeah. So it was really nice to have this moment of discourse and exchange, because the truth is, and here I'll get serious, a good community doesn't shut up people like Buddy Backry and his point of view. A good community and a good exchange allows a respectful exchange for both points of view. And that's
a good community newspaper, Erika, allows that as well.
That's true. That's true. So what you have to do is you have to be really respectful, because it's another form of tyranny to not let people who have unpopular opinions speak. Even though they might offend you, they might be offensive to you, you have to allow a space as long as it's respectful for that exchange. So there's the seriousness of, and the backstory, a little kind of towny drama, but it was good. A good week.
Oh, we love it.
Inspired democracy, that democratic discourse. Excellent.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
From the uncle of the Sultan of Solitary.
Well, and Heather and I, we're suckers for those Michael Jackson popcorn moments too. So
Exactly.
we've had a handful of those this week.
Have you? It's good. I'm glad. We need it, don't we?
It is great.
Truthfully, we talked to the administrator of one of the private pages on Facebook, and he said almost the same thing you did, that this discourse is really important, and to, close voices down is a dangerous thing. And what's really important is the discourse, and people learn so much in the comments, right? In the responses.
Yeah, there's this kind of management by ambush, I call it, that happens online, where sometimes when you don't have a strong administrator, like, I don't know who you're talking to. Were you talking to Jeff Delaney? Or
No.
were you talking to Annie Cameron? Is a great example. She does the Essex page, and she does an amazing job of managing that, because if you don't have that, it can become a runaway train very quickly. And the truth is, social media can be so ephemeral, and it can be really, really destructive if it's not managed properly.
So true.
Well said. Well, Erika, as always, thank you for your insight and telling us what's going on in Manchester and Essex. Have a great weekend. We look forward to chatting with you next week.
You too. Enjoyed this great weather.
Again, our hearts go out to the St. Pierre family, to Christina's husband, her 4 children, and her family. It is such a sad story.
It is. Well said, Heather. I am a friend of the Backery family, so it was interesting to see Erika, and I know that every now and then there is a letter to the editor there, and it got pretty colorful. But discourse in online and offline is a lost art around here lately. So it's cool to see it working so well through the Manchester Cricket. So we thank Erika for that. Monday, we have a great show for you. We're going to be featuring the trailer from Kim Smith's documentary on the life story of monarch butterflies. So we're giving Kim the entire platform herself, so we'll be able to show that for you. And the imagery that she passed along to us to share with you is exquisite. So we can't wait for Monday for that. Heather, have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too,
And
Kory.
so do you. And we will see you after a couple of days. Enjoy the weekend. Stay away from the beaches if you don't live here.